stars. Here we go. We are going to talk about the phases of the moon again, because the moon is awesome. So here we have a different type of model. This is not a scale model because it's not to scale, so the proportions are not accurate here. However, it is a model because it represents something larger than itself, which is the phases of the moon. So let's look at these phases. Here we have the sun. Now this is not to scale, but I just want to show you the sun here is on the right. These arrows indicate the direction the light is going. So the light's going that way. Okay? These pictures of the phases represent the phases of the moon. There are 8 phases of the moon, and it takes about a month for the moon to go through all of these phases. So the moon actually revolves around the earth, similar to how our earth revolves around the sun. The moon revolves around the earth, and it takes about 1 month for it to make one entire revolution around. It's interesting because when it's revolving, so here we have, I'm going to pretend that I'm the earth, this is the moon, and we're going to say the light is from over here, that's the sun. So in this case, again, moon, it's the moon popsicle, the moon lollipop. We have over here sun, and I'm the earth. So to do this demonstration, I can just put the moon, I hold this moon lollipop arm's length, and I'm starting with the first phase. It doesn't really matter which phase you start with because it's a cycle, but this phase would be new moon. So right here. Now, the moon rotates also. It spins on its own axis like this, so this is rotation, but it also revolves around the earth. Okay, so it's revolving like this. It spins on its own axis like this, this is rotation, but it also revolves around the earth. Okay, so it's revolving like this. Woo! Woo! Okay, as it's doing that, it's rotating at the same rate. So if it's rotating at the same rate that it is revolving, it only will see one side of the moon. So there's a side of the moon we have not even seen from Earth because the moon is rotating and revolving at the same rate. So let's look at this. The first phase then we're going to talk about is new moon. Right here, new moon. And new moon is when the moon is between the sun and the earth. And there are sometimes, very rarely, but sometimes the moon will block the light from the sun. And that is called a solar eclipse. So when the sunlight is blocked by the moon, we call it a solar eclipse. And our next solar eclipse here that we'll actually be able to see from California is coming up in about 4 years. So it doesn't happen very often, and very, very few people actually get to witness a full solar eclipse. Notice these pictures represent the phases of the moon that we see from the earth. So otherwise this picture is not going to make any sense. So if I were to look at these phases right now, I would wonder why this moon is in shadow when the sun is right here. All right? The reason is because these pictures represent what we see from the earth. So if you were to look up at the sky at night and look at the moon at night, this is what you would see in a new moon. Okay, the moon would be in shadow. You can see like the outline of the moon. Okay, so that is why these pictures are a little different than what you'd see from space. Because really what you'd see from space is a moon that is half in shadow and half illuminated. Always. Really, there are no phases of the moon from space. The phases are because we see the moon from the Earth. All right? So let's look at the next phase. So we're starting with new moon. As we go through these first half of phases, these are called the waxing phases, and we're going counterclockwise. Counterclockwise, the moon goes around the Earth. First phase, the next phase after new moon is called a waxing crescent. So the first half of the lunar cycle is this entire cycle, lunar, moon. The first half are waxing phases. So waxing phases means the moon's getting brighter. So waxing means growing or getting brighter. So if you think waxing your car, brightens your car up. And the light is going from right to left. Okay, always. So if we look at these three phases and look at the light's here and it's moving to the left, the light. So waxing crescent. So next phase then is the first quarter. So now we have the right half of the moon is illuminated. Okay. Next phase, waxing gibbous. So gibbous phase means that most of the moon is illuminated, but not all of it. So it's more than half illuminated, but less than entirely illuminated. So gibbous means more than half, but less than whole is lit up. So waxing gibbous. Then we have full moon, and this is when you started doing your moon journal. We start with the full moon on October 1st. Full moon is when the Earth is between the moon and the sun. And about twice a month, the moon will be lined up, or not twice a month, twice a year, the moon will be lined up so that it actually is in the shadow of the Earth. So the sunlight, when it hits the Earth, creates a shadow. And when the moon is in that shadow, a direct line of the shadow, we call that a lunar eclipse. And the next lunar eclipse is November 30th. So November 30th, you can go outside, look up at the moon, and you won't even see it because it's a lunar eclipse. So next thing, now these phases, the second half of phases are called the waning phases. So waning, think shrinking, getting darker. So as we go through these, we're doing the same thing really we did over here. But instead of the light going from right to left, it's the dark going from right to left. So if we look at the dark, the shadow, and look at these three phases, the shadow is moving from right to left. See, it's here, now it's here, now it's even more to the left. So the shadow is what we're looking at. We're looking at the waning phases. So waning gibbous is when just the very right edge of the moon is in shadow. And remember, gibbous phases are when the moon is mostly illuminated, more than half, but less than full. Next phase is a third quarter phase, sometimes called last quarter phase. So this is when the right half is in shadow. Half of the right half is in shadow. Next phase is the waning crescent phase. So this is when most of the moon is in shadow except for the very left edge, which is lit up. It's a waning crescent. And then we're back to new moon. So this is a lunar cycle. It takes about a month. And this is when the moon is going around the Earth. We have the moon. And the moon is going around the Earth. Okay, going around. The Earth goes around the sun. So the moon's going around the Earth, and the Earth is moving around the sun. If I were to look at all of these phases from space, so, or just we've left planet Earth, we're in a spaceship and we're looking down, we would not see these phases. So if we look at the moon from space, or we left Earth and we're looking back, this is what it would look like as it goes through the cycle. So you'll notice there are no phases. All right, because really, think about it. Half of the moon is going to be illuminated because of the sun, and the other half is going to be in shadow. All right, we just see the phases because we're on Earth, and the moon is going around the Earth. Okay, but from space, this is what the moon cycle would look like. They all look the same. The moon is always half lit and half in shadow. It's always half illuminated and half in shadow. So check out that moon. Tonight we should be waning gibbous and approaching third quarter. By the 7th, we should be reaching third quarter. So each quarter is about a week. So it's 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. So the whole thing is 1 month. So check out that moon. Woo! And actually this Halloween, they're expecting to have what's called a blue moon. And I want you to research a blue moon and tell me what it is. Moons are awesome.